Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to Struggle to Strength.
Hi, Mary Beth. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you can join. I am just going to introduce myself real quickly before we get started with the interview. So, I am Mary Beth Simone, and I am the CEO and founder of Niche Partnership Consulting. And I teach entrepreneurs and professionals how to create their contingency plan to empower their second in command to keep business and life running smoothly in an emergency. And this forum, Struggle to Strength, was created to highlight the strengths that my clients and my collaborators have developed as a result of their struggles, with hopes that it will inspire the audience to connect the dots from their own Struggle to Strength story. So today we have Stephanie Gillin with us. And we're going to focus on your story, Stephanie, of how you use the trauma of evacuation to strengthen the plan for your family. So before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing, what you're working on currently?
Absolutely. So, Stephanie Gillin, originally from Philadelphia area, spent lots of time working at Temple University before deciding that we wanted a change in our lifestyle. When we moved out to Colorado, we just looked at the landscape to see, what kind of was the best decision for us. And I had loved working for a university. So I very happily found a job working at the University of Colorado Boulder for the Lead School of Business. And I'm their Associate Dean for Administration and Finance. And I've been there 6 years now, and I love it.
That's awesome. I can't believe that it's been 6 years already. That's amazing.
I know. It's been really something. And we've been in Colorado 11 years this
I love
year.
it. Yeah, yeah. And so I just want to shout out to anyone who is with us live. If you have any questions or you just want to let us know that you're with us, put something in the comments, and that's how we will see that you're here, or we will answer any questions that you share with us. So, full disclosure, Stephanie is my sister in law and one of my very best friends. And she and my brother created their contingency plan in the fall of 2019. So, you were my first remote clients, right?
Yes, we
I
were.
We had no idea that COVID was coming, and I wanted to try out the remote experience. And so you guys were my guinea pigs and created your plan in the fall. And there's actually a video of you giving feedback on the website. So anyone who's watching, you may recognize Stephanie a little bit from my website. So, Stephanie, can you take us back to December 30th, 2021, and share with us, how did the day start? What was going on?
So, for those of you who aren't sure about the area, we live in Superior, Colorado, which is about 25 minutes from Denver, 15 minutes from Boulder. So, we're right in the middle of those both areas. Um, it's very, I would say, a community, a very planned community. So we have like walking trails, we have pools, we have lots of biking and running and hiking trails for people, lots of kids, very, very kid friendly. So on the day of the 30th, we were hoping to go skiing, but because there hasn't been snow this year, we've been really light on snow, and especially before January, there wasn't enough. So there was an exhibit at the Art Museum. So we all went down to Denver, went to the Art Museum, had a great morning. We're sitting down to lunch when we got texted from the police. So the police texted everybody who lives in these neighborhoods, Superior, Louisville, and parts of Broomfield. I think maybe South Boulder, they lost their power at some point as well. So, it's a pretty big area that was impacted by this. So anyway, we were texted and we're told to evacuate immediately. So we're 25 minutes away from home. Our dog was at home, who truly is another member of the family. So we're like, what does this mean? And my husband texted our neighbor and he said, what's going on? And she sent back the picture of the smoke just billowing. So outside of our houses, there's a, you can see all the way to the foothills, which is the beginning of the Rocky Mountains. And just stunning amounts of black smoke were just coming up all over. And at that point, it was difficult to tell where it was coming from, what exactly was happening. So they said, you should really get out of here. You know, we're packing up and we're leaving. So we were like, what do we do? Like, we're from the city, we're from Philly. We don't know anything about this. We're like, what does it mean to be evacuated? So we drove home. We drove back roads because we had figured that the highways might be really bad. And as it turned out, the fire had jumped over the highway. So people at one point were driving through flames, which was really awful. So we took back roads, and then we just really had to make our way around gawkers, just all the people who were just trying to get to the side of the road and see what's happening and looking at the smoke. But we got through and we got our dog. And this is where people in Colorado say, well, did you have your go bag? And I'm like, what's a go bag? And they're like, if there's a fire, you grab your go bag and it has all your essentials. And I said, why would we need one? We live in a suburban area. There's not a lot of trees around us. I mean, we have trees in the community, but there's this, it would be like, I would say a suburb of Philadelphia, like this happening in that kind of area would be shocking to have wildfires start. So I grabbed all the medication for me, my husband, my son, and my dog. Medications, 2 or 3 changes of clothes, and our safe, which was awesome because when we went through contingency planning, we had this book, a binder that Mary Beth helped us build, and everything is in there, from our phone bills to our photocopies of our driver's license to our passports. All of our bank account information is just in this one binder. So my husband grabbed the safe and is carrying it downstairs, and the safe completely falls apart all over. Like, so we got the safe out and we got ourselves out. So sorry. That's my work testing our emergency alert system.
Perfect timing, huh?
Yeah, that's something that, we'll see probably a little bit more since the fires as well.
Right.
So anyway, we rushed out of the house and I took my son in our car, and he's 12, and my husband took the dog. And we got halfway down our block, and then we were stuck in traffic for 2 hours because everybody was trying to evacuate at once. And it was absolutely terrifying to be sitting there, not going anywhere, and trying to figure out, okay, at least the really good thing is we have friends nearby and we knew we could go to their house. And they started texting us immediately as soon as they heard about it and said, just get over here. But nobody could get out because everybody was just stuck. And I would say I went about a block, like a city block, in 2 hours.
Wow.
And I was with my son and we're listening to the radio. I got a radio station and people were calling the radio station, and the radio station's calling the police to say, you have people stuck in their cars. So at a certain point, I thought it wasn't healthy to continue to listen to that, especially with my son. So I made it into an event for him because he's 12, like he was sitting in the back seat still. I was like, come on up front. You can see what it's like to sit in the front seat. Let's sing songs. So we just sang songs and just tried to keep calm. And then people started panicking a bit. So we saw people, like somebody drove down the pavement, trying to get, just further. They didn't get to go anywhere because at this point, the fires had really come up that were a block away from where we were, and ash had started falling down.
Mm.
So some people started getting out and running, which I've since learned is the worst thing you can do. Stay in your cars. I had, the air on that was recirculating inside the car so that we wouldn't have the really bad, we weren't getting smoke inhalation. And then suddenly it opened up, and they just opened all lanes going in both directions so that everybody could get out of the neighborhoods and get on the highway. By then, I think the fire had already jumped the highway, and they had gotten that under control. So we were able to be at our friend's house in 10 minutes after that 2 hours of being in the car.
After the 2 hours, yeah. Yeah, wow, that is so intense to hear you describe it, like in the chronology of events. I see we have Rhonda with us, and she's saying that had to have been incredibly frightening to receive a message like that. So I'm curious, Stephanie, like, so since this was the first time that you've ever experienced an evacuation like this in Colorado and being city people, I'm curious if on the way back to the house, did you and your husband like try to strategize, or what was your like? I don't know. Like, how did you figure out what you were going to do when you got to the house?
Oh my gosh, Mary Beth, you know me. So was I strategizing? Yes. I was like making lists of what I knew that we needed to get and going through, okay, what's the best way, like watching escape routes, what's the best way out of the neighborhood, trying to make that determination because there were just cars and lines everywhere. And then, it was getting difficult to see too as the smoke was coming in. So I was just trying to say, what's the best way to get in, the best roads into the complex, what do we need, and what's the best way to get out? And that's all I really had on my mind. So it's when you're a planner, and I think a disaster happens that you're not expecting, it's unnerving, because you think, oh, well, I have my contingency plan, I have this, I have that. You never know what to expect. Fortunately, I've went into high gear and just made things happen, and we got it done.
Yeah. It reminds me of when Ida hit last year, we got an evacuation text in the middle of the night. And because they thought that the dam near us was going to break and flood everywhere. So I'm a city person.
Right.
So I said to my husband, like, we have to evacuate. I can't believe this. And he said, no, we don't. We're upstream. Go back to sleep. And I'm like, I couldn't go back to sleep. I'm like, oh my God, what if he's wrong? I know we are upstream. We're up on a hill. But yeah, it is very surreal when you get that. And then you kind of wonder, like, is this for real? Do I really have to do this? You can understand why people maybe don't respond when they hear a fire alarm or something, immediately. Yeah.
Well,
Because
we
you're
were
in
out on our
disbelief.
deck. Exactly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. But we were out on our deck. Brian and Braden were looking at the fires. And I'm rushing around. And I'm like, get back inside. We are leaving now, because they just wanted to check it out. But the urgency is something that if it's not immediate, you really have to give yourself that purpose.
Yeah.
And direct your energy in that direction.
Yeah, because I think that you can get lulled into a false sense of security and, not really knowing until it's too late. And then I have to ask, how was your dog, Kona, when you got there?
No, he was fine.
He didn't have any sense of what was, and how was he in the car?
Well, you know what? He's a very anxious dog anyway. But he was fine. As soon as he's with my husband, he's all's right with the world. So he was fine. He was excited to go for a car ride.
That's really good to know, because I was curious, how the dog would react and what the dog senses would be like.
But that's another thing we had to think about, because we have a pit bull. And there are many places that will not take pit bulls. We have to be really careful. Like, you know, there are some hotels who don't want to take pit bulls. Fortunately, we have really great friends who also have dogs, and all our dogs get along great. So we didn't have that problem. But that went through my head as well. I was like, thank goodness that we have friends that we can bring our dog along with us, because I don't know what I would have done. I would have had to find a place that would have been okay with it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a really good point because
Mm-hmm.
the pit bull thing is a big deal in
Yeah,
Colorado since they're
it
not
is.
really accepted everywhere. So I am curious, did you guys ever discuss an evacuation strategy before this happened?
No, no, it wasn't anything like we even thought we had to do. You know, it just didn't come across. Like we talked if we had a really bad hailstorm or something, like what do we have to protect around the house? But a fire is such a completely different story. It really took us completely by surprise. And I think people were just in such shock too, you know, that how is this happening in this neighborhood, a wildfire? Like we're used to it. We've grown used to it. And you can see the mountains from my house. So we've watched fires there
Yeah,
that have happened. And it just wasn't expected.
yeah. Um, I remember before the fire happened, I remember you saying that creating the contingency plan prompted you to pursue some other services like financial planning, that kind of thing. Can you share a little bit about the changes that you made to the plan before the fire? And then we'll talk about what has happened since the fire.
Yes. Well, we had to make quite a bit of changes because my husband had changed jobs.
Mhm.
So we took that opportunity to go through our whole plan, update it. We had to change our insurance to my insurance. And in the midst of that, we were saying, you know, we really need a financial planner. It just feels irresponsible at this point. We have a 12-year-old. Um, we need to really think about what's going to happen. You know, we had our will done, thank goodness. So that was something we didn't have to kind of go back into, but we did pull it back out and make sure that everything was up to date. So I think before the fire, what we were looking at was just making sure that all of our documentation was up to date and that we were making the right money decisions. And then since the fire, we've been looking more at our health insurance limits. We've been looking at our house insurance. We've upped our insurance on our house, if God forbid anything were to happen, so that we could make sure that we had money enough to be evacuated and have money to stay at a place for a significant period of time. Those are the things you start doing. We had to have someone come through our house and check all of our insulation and make sure it's okay. I mean, we are so fortunate that we did not have damage. Like it is unbelievable. Like as I'm telling you the story, I still can't believe that we were so fortunate that we didn't have to do any remediation. And the scary thing was, you know, the day of, I think it was I don't remember if the temperature dropped on the 30th or the 31st with the winds were coming in, but it went down to single digits. So then the fear was, what if our pipes freeze? You know, that was really frightening. And fortunately, we had a contractor who snuck into the neighborhood and he went in and turned off our pipes for us.
Yeah, because all the power was shut off.
Yes. So, yes, we lost electricity, we lost water, um, we lost heat. So, everything went down at once. And that was the scariest part, I think, you know, too, was saying, okay, well, you think we've saved ourselves, but then you do start worrying about your house. And I think what I've realized is I really don't care much about things. You know, I really don't. I wasn't when after we left the house, I was like, is there anything that I missed? Like I grabbed our grandmother's necklace, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like something like that means the world to me. But the other things, I was just like, what we'll figure it out. We had all of our photographs, though, digitized. So
Yes.
some we had in the basement in, just old photo albums. So since then, we've also scanned all of our old photos.
Wow. You guys have been really busy since getting back
Yeah.
into the house. So that's one thing that I just wanted you to share. Like, what is the state of your house so that everybody
Yes.
knows? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we were so, so fortunate, but we didn't know that at the time because the TV coverage, they took it at such an angle that we thought that the houses one block over were on fire, when really it was kind of like one block down and one block over across the street. So the fire stopped before they got to the street.
It still was so close.
Very, very close, very close. And a lot of my neighbors are doing remediation for smoke work, and their chimneys had just tons of ash in them. And again, we just
Oh,
got really lucky. We were allowed to come back to our house early New Year's Day, but we had no heat and we had to boil all the water. So we just went, and people, the community just rallied. I mean, there were stations open where you could pick up water and heaters on the 31st, and the fires happened on the 30th. Like, the community effort was tremendous, tremendous.
you
It's
guys
so
must have
fantastic.
been exhausted by New Year's Eve.
Oh my gosh, I slept. Well, we didn't have heat, right? So it was
Yeah.
freezing. And I had gotten an electric blanket for Christmas. And I was thinking, like, do I really need this? The greatest thing ever to have. At least we had electricity. I just got under the electric blanket and I took a picture of me and my son and we're all bundled up. And the reason why we wanted to go home is because they said they're going to start sending people through to turn on your gas, but you have to be there in
Yeah.
person. So we went at 7 o'clock in the morning, and at 8:30 at night, I was like, oh no, like, what are we going to do? Do we stay? Because then we start to hear that people were looting and people were
Yeah.
starting to come into the neighborhood. We weren't sure what to do. And fortunately, at 9 o'clock, we saw the lights outside of a utility truck. Unfortunately, what they said was they were told to stop 2 houses before our house. So I went and got all the neighbors who I knew were in their homes with children, and we all went and like begged these really wonderful gentlemen who came in from Kansas to help the situation, and said, please, can you please just give us, our heat? And they did. So great. So great. So by 11 o'clock that night, we were in bed, and I got out of bed 2 p.m. the next day because I was
Wow.
so exhausted. I was so exhausted.
Oh, I bet. And Rhonda said, "Yeah, it's amazing how a crisis will show the gaps in the plans and protections that we have established." And it's so true. It's like it's difficult to test our plans without an event, to pressure test them. And
Mhm.
that's basically what you were able to do through this, very, very unfortunate event. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So, are there any other changes that you see that you need to make to your contingency plan at this point?
Well, I want to make sure, like, something we noticed was that our son isn't the beneficiary on our house if we were to lose it. Like, he would eventually get it, but we want to make it sure it's very clear in writing. So we had missed that for some reason.
Uh
So
huh.
we have to make sure that our son is the obvious beneficiary, that there's no question about it.
Yeah.
We're looking at things like that. We're looking at the what we need to have in place for our child,
Yeah.
as well as it's not just the will, it's beyond that. What kind of planning do we have in place?
Yeah. And it might be worthwhile considering an estate plan where everything goes into a trust under the estate where your son is the beneficiary of the trust.
Mm,
Yeah, so that
yeah.
yeah, everything will flow to him, but at the appropriate age and with some type of oversight. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, if anything.
Fortunately, I have a wonderful executor in my
Yeah.
sister-in-law. But no, yes, I think there's a lot we still have to look at. And one thing when we were working on the plan, Mary Beth, you're like, make sure you keep updating this as things change. Because if you wait too long, then it's like you're going through all of your plans again.
Right.
And we were fortunate to be able to have the plan done during COVID. So we were able to refresh it. We had more time. We weren't
Yeah.
bored. We were in the house. Like it
Right.
wasn't, where were we going? So we were able to spend a lot of time on it, but still, refreshing it is something that we will continue to do for sure
Yes.
now.
It is not set it and forget it, when it comes to insurance policies, when it comes to legal documents. Yeah, there's always opportunity. And I was just reading yesterday about how 8.2% of home values in the US are now at $1 million or higher. So that's a 50% increase since pre-pandemic times. So those are the kind of things, those are the kind of changes that, you might think, oh, great, now it's worth so much money. But then you have to take all of those steps to make sure that you have the right type of coverage and plans in place for assets that, are that valuable, like our properties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also to take a look and say, okay, it was, fortunately, there weren't a lot of casualties, but there were casualties. So you are looking
Yeah.
at your life and you're thinking, okay, am I doing everything? So, you know, we're booking a trip to go back to Philadelphia this summer so that we can, make sure that we see people. We're taking the vacation that we were supposed to take pre-COVID. We're like, all right, let's get on this. Let's get this moving. So you're looking in that direction too. And in the sense that, am I living my life to the fullest?
Yeah.
And what else do I really feel like I need to do
Yeah.
before it's too late? You have to think, I
Right.
hate to be morbid, but that's what this is about, right? Like
Right.
turning it into a strength and hopefully coming out of this so much stronger.
Right, right. And not being afraid of, looking at those opportunity areas and taking those steps, to prepare for
Mhm.
the unexpected. So, what type of advice would you have for people who are reluctant to create or who have not yet created their contingency plan after your experience?
When we did it, it was difficult because you're thinking about end of life, which is always hard to think about. And you don't want to necessarily be in that headspace, but it's really, really important to have everything in order. And I was so glad, even though our safe broke, which we since bought a new one,
Yeah,
I was so glad we had it all there because I knew even if we just grabbed that, we'd be in good shape. And scanning, the documents, making sure that the documents get scanned as well so that we have a virtual version in the
yeah,
cloud that we could access anytime. So I think that because, we never expected something like this to happen, it happened and we had been prepared. It makes me feel so much better about what could potentially come next. And I really feel that we will go into whatever we have, knowing that we've decided amongst ourselves that material things don't matter. We don't care about them. The things we care about, we know we keep in that safe though. So we can just grab the safe and go.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I'm curious, have you noticed any changes to emergency preparedness in your neighborhood or in Superior overall since the fire?
There's lots of conversations. There's lots of people who are studying. A lot of researchers are out here. We have a lot of climate scientists out here,
Yeah,
but even more are coming out to look at the way that the fires occurred and the way that because the cinders would blow and then we had 100-mile-per-hour winds. So in
yes.
some places it would blow out the fires, but then it would spark in other areas. So the pattern when you drive through my neighborhood, like I did yesterday, it's like these 5 houses are okay and these 10 houses are devastated that are right next to it. There's a row of 4 stores. 3 of those 4 stores are demolished, one store standing.
Wow.
It's very weird the way that it traveled. And I don't know a lot about fire, but I'm learning more about it from this.
Yeah.
But this was a situation that people didn't expect to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And that's even makes it a little more unsettling that there's such a what appears to be a random pattern to where the devastation happened, you know?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, we're talking a very large area that
Yeah.
just 5 houses here, 10 houses here. It's very odd. It's very odd. It's
Yeah.
so sad. It's really devastating. I think the good thing that happened was on, I think it was the first and second, it snowed. So we
Yeah.
had snow when we got back into our house, and we couldn't see the devastation as well. And now that the snow is all melting, you really see it again. And restoration efforts are underway, but it's going to be years. It's going to
Yeah.
take several years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your story with us. And I couldn't be happier that you and your family created your plan and will continue to evolve your plan because, of course, you are some of the most important people in my life. So, um, and I will be here to support you as you have any questions on updating your plan. But thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.